So I'm super excited today. This is like the happiest day of my life, and I don't even think I'm exaggerating, because today I got my green card. Yes, I had my immigration interview today, and I went there to the immigration office, which was in Riverside, uh, which was in San Bernardino, and we drove there today with my husband. I was pretty scared. This video is partly educational. I want to share with people what a green card immigration interview is like. People who are maybe about to go through this or are getting married and know they will have to go through it. I'll tell you firsthand what my experience was, and I know every interview is different, but this is my experience, and this interview happened today on November 26th, 2019. So it's pretty relevant and up to date. First of all, our attorney came with us. We didn't ask him to come with us. He wanted to come with us to the interview because he wanted to get more experience. He said he hadn't attended an interview in like a year, and he just wanted to refresh his expertise, so he wanted to attend the interview. So he asked us, "Do you mind if I sit in the back of your interview?" I said, "I don't care, as long as it doesn't look bad, like we're trying to hide something and we're bringing a lawyer." Someone had told me, "Don't bring a lawyer because it makes you look guilty, like you're trying to hide something." So I was a little sketchy about that, but he asked to come with us, and who am I to say no? I mean, he knows what he's doing. He says, "Don't worry, they're not going to think that. I'm going to tell them I'm only there to observe for my own benefit." So I said, "Okay, that's cool." Anyway, so at first, the normal interview, first of all, there's a lot of misconceptions about the immigration interview. What you see in movies is often not what really happens, okay? So, first of all, one myth that I wanted to bust is the sex myth. They don't ask about your sex life. Everyone always kind of jokes around or tells me, "Oh my God, they're going to ask you which side of the bed you sleep on and what kind of sex you're having." No, they don't ask that. I don't think they're even supposed to ask about sex. So take that off the list of things to worry about. Or another myth is that they will always separate you. No, it's not true. We got separated, and I'll tell you why in a second, but it's not true that they always separate people at the marriage interview, and I'll tell you why and how they do it. So our interview started pretty innocently, and they're asking me a bunch of mundane questions. A lot of the questions were read from the application pack, which it contains a lot of questions that you're going to answer no to. So, have you been a member of a terrorist organization? Obviously, no. Have you ever participated in an effort to recruit someone to a terrorist organization? All those questions. Obviously, you're going to answer no to all of them. But one of them was like, "Have you ever been a member of a communist party?" And I was thinking, well, no, I haven't. I'm not a communist. But what if I had been? Would that have impacted my application in a negative way? So, that was a little weird. But obviously, I'm not a communist, so I didn't have to worry about that. And then they started asking me questions about my husband. So he started asking me, "Tell me your husband's name." And I answered the question, and he goes, "What about his middle name?" And I know his middle name. So I said, "Oh, okay, well, so that's his middle name." "Tell me his date of birth." I obviously knew his date of birth. And a few basic questions. I answered all of them. None of them were very hard. We were expecting hard questions like, "What toothpaste does your husband use?" Or "What socks does he wear?" Really like weird questions. They didn't ask any of that. They were pretty basic questions that most people would know about their spouses. Now, here's where we got in trouble. So my husband, Dennis, takes this medication every day, and it makes him drowsy and sleepy, and he forgets things. So he took the medication this morning, and he recited my date of birth with a mistake. He got the month wrong. And I was like, "Honey, that's not my date of birth. You know it." And obviously I wasn't gonna tell what it is, but I was like, "Come on, you know my birthday." And he goes, "Oh yeah, it's the 7th of July, not August." So like, he got it right the second time, but he got it wrong the first time. And I think the officers are trained to pick up on that. So if someone, and he looked at him and he goes, "Oh, you don't know your husband's date of birth?" And he said it with real seriousness. And I'm like, "Oh, we're screwed. This is it." I thought this was the end of the interview. Or even if it wasn't the end of the interview, I thought this mistake would cost us the application, and that we would have to come again and appeal And I was dreading that. I was like, oh no, what has he done? But anyway, the interview carried on for a while. And then he says, I'm going to have to separate you and talk to you separately. So again, I'm panicking inside and I'm getting real scared and thinking, oh, this is it. We've messed it up. We've blown it. He didn't know my date of birth. He thinks we're not a real couple. And I was just sitting outside in the waiting room with all the other people, like getting really anxious and depressed and nervous. And I was so nervous. I was like, my whole life is hinging on this. I can't be denied. I can't be denied this green card. I really, really have to get it to have a normal life. And then after 30 minutes, I get called back into the room and I get interviewed. And I was asked about a trip that we took. What was the last trip that we took? And our last trip that we took was to Laughlin, Nevada. So I talked about that trip. We flew, and then my husband got sick on the third day. So on the third day, we rented a car and we drove back. And we stopped on at a particular spot to have a lunch with a friend. So I gave him all that trip was packed with details. He was asking all about every single detail. Where did you have dinner on day 2? What did you do on day 3? Who did you leave your dogs with? Etc. All those questions. And so I gave him a lot of detail. And then Dennis had been asked, my husband had been asked about the same trip in a separate room. Or rather in the same room, but without me being in the room. So we were both quizzed about the same trip, and he was asked a lot of details as well. So they were basically checking how many details that I gave would match the details that Dennis gave. And fortunately for us, we had, because the trip really happened and we really went there for our honeymoon, and none of it was a lie, our details matched like 90%. So he goes, yeah, you guys had a very close match on the trip recount. So we know that you're a real couple and you really went on this honeymoon, and we've got like receipts from the trip and we have pictures from the trip. So he goes, okay, I can tell that the trip really happened. And therefore, that in my head, it doesn't mean that we're a real couple, but obviously I was happy that they accepted that as evidence that we are a real couple. I mean, I don't know what else they can ask to prove that we're a real couple. But they did ask us a few questions about our house, but not many. They asked us about our dogs and like who feeds the dogs, and those questions had to match as well, and they did. So I got my green card, and they told me right then and then that I'm getting it, so you don't have to wait in limbo for another period of time. They tell you right away whether you got it or not. I believe they only separate people if there's a red flag. So we had a red flag in our first conversation. He forgot my date of birth. That's why we got separated. If he had remembered my date of birth correctly the first time, I don't think they would have separated us and asked us at length about this trip. They might have asked a few more questions and let us go, and the whole thing would have lasted like 20 minutes. But with the separation, the whole interview took about an hour. Another thing, they didn't look whether we were wearing our wedding bands, our rings. And I actually didn't have my ring because my ring is getting resized. It was too big. So I didn't have it. And I was like, oh crap, I forgot my ring. But I don't have my ring. So he didn't ask to see whether we're wearing rings. But obviously it's a good thing to do to, wear your wedding rings when you go for the marriage interview. Duh. Anyway, I'm not going to give like all kinds of advice. You can ask me any questions in the comments. I just wanted to share my experience and tell you that I finally got a green card, which has been my lifelong dream. And I can't believe that it's like real. I just can't believe that I'm a permanent resident of the United States. That's so awesome. So here's a little picture of the top of the letter that I got. And I'm just so psyched about it. So anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this video.